is Totally 80s, the podcast dedicated to the music of the greatest decade ever. So, turn up your Walkman, loosen that scrunchie, and get ready to talk 80s with your host, Lyndsey Parker.
Hi, I'm Lyndsey Parker from Yahoo Entertainment and SiriusXM Volume, and this is another episode of Totally 80s. If this is the first time you're joining us, why not take a moment to follow us at Totally 80s on Facebook and Instagram, or email us your comments and show ideas to podcast@totally80s.com. You can also see our episodes on video, so go to our Totally 80s YouTube channel and check it out if you are so inclined. Join me today is my partner in all things 80s, the Jerome to my Morris, John Hughes.
Hi. Gosh, I'm going to try not to make another bad Prince pun this week.
Okay, we'll go over ahead. I'll do it. John, right. Is the water warm enough?
We did that already. We did that last time.
It was good the last time.
Yes, the water's fine, Lyndsey.
Do you have another Prince one you want to do?
No, I did. You got the look last time. I think we're good.
How's the family?
Oh, brutal line in Purple Rain just cuts to the bone.
Well, speaking of the family, not the band, though we will talk about them as well. But speaking of the Totally 80s family, we have a guest that's joining us again that I am excited to have. Joining us again to talk is a recurring guest, Totally 80s, who has had a long career writing about music and pop culture, starting from his days at his college paper and then going on to write for Billboard, Rolling Stone, the LA Times, Spin, Vibe, NPR, and so much more. And you can currently read his work on rhino.com, as well as see him every Friday on the Rhino Report across social media. But we, of course, know him best as one of the writers for Totally80s.com. Welcome back to the show, Scott T. Sterling.
Hello, welcome back. It's great to see you guys again.
Good to see you. We didn't get around to talking about all the Prince proteges. The subject today, in case people hadn't figured out from all of the terrible puns me and John were saying before you joined us, we were talking last time about Prince proteges and mentees. There were so many that we only got to the tip of the purple iceberg last time.
I didn't even get to tell all my Des Dickerson stories yet. I've got so many more.
Awesome. Well, let's get started. There are definitely some more obscure proteges that I want to get to that people don't know about, but we do have to talk about Sheila E, of course. Yeah. They were a couple. They were engaged. She's still very much a part of his legacy. When there was the tribute to him that the Grammys did in early 2020, in the before times, she was the music director of it. I mean, almost to call her a protege is kind of doing her a disservice, given her pedigree and everything she's done since she was associated with Prince. But she was very much part. And before, you know, and her just, you know, she's performed at the Oscars. I mean, she's a force. But she, you know, was definitely in his, or we'll call her a mentee. I don't know. I mean, they were definitely peers, and she is very much associated with his legacy. And she did a couple albums during, you know, The Glamorous Life and Romance 1600. My favorite jam by her is Love Bizarre, which is a song. Classic. And I like Holly Rock. Again, that's the song by Sheila E. that is on the Originals album. His version's pretty awesome. But let's talk a little bit about Sheila E., how they came together. Because like I'm saying, not exactly a protege, not exactly some like newbie he took under his wing, but you know, just he very much orchestrated the lane her career went down.
You just reminded me of the other song that was meant for Apollonia 6, which was The Glamorous Life.
Really?
Sung by Apollonia. And yeah, you know what? This is too good for you. And like, take it away.
Because I'm sure that Sheila E.'s artistry was really like appealing to him on top of everything else. Like, he's in love with her. They're a couple. But then it's like she can get on the drums and out rock him. And he's like, oh, okay, we can work with this, you know, like.
There is a version of Glamorous Life on Originals as well. And, you know, it's great. But yes, there was that secret sauce of her drumming. And also just not just how it sounded, but I very vividly remember the first time I saw her on MTV, which would have been the Glamorous. It was the fact that she was drumming and singing, and not just drumming, but also like standing up while drumming and dancing while drumming and like
doing little routines at the sticks, spinning around. That was the Purple Rain tour when it was just Prince, Sheila E, bang bang, back to back. And so she just came out and just dazzled you, just like, it was like, what? You know, I mean, it was the perfect setup. perfect.
That high kick in heels to the cymbal is just
Oh, come on,
but
best move.
The secret, for me again, secret weapon on that album, which again sounds like an Apollonia 6 outtake, is Belle of St. Mark. That totally sounds like it was supposed to be written for Apollonia 6 because it doesn't fit, and it's very new wavy, and there's not like a drum break or anything, and it's crazy.
So is the takeaway from this is that Apollonia 6 got screwed of all the good songs?
Big time. Because I put that Apollonia 6 record right next to Ice Cream Castles. They both have this real afterthought feel to them, and just like, well, we got to have something in the marketplace, so just kind of.
We know there are demos for all those songs for Apollonia 6. Must not have been happy with how the vocals were. I mean, you don't
say.
She was an actress. She wasn't a singer. She was an actress.
At all, yeah. And also, quick Sheila E. shout out from the first album, the ballad Noon Rendezvous. Yes. Very underrated ballad. Very pretty song.
Romance 1600, I think, is an underrated record. And it got, it kind of bounced back when Love Bizarre was a single. But people forget the first single was Sister Fate, and it was a tremendous flop.
And how does that even happen? Like, how did that song get picked?
It's a but don't you think it's a great song though, or do you think it's the wrong choice for a single?
I just think it was the wrong choice for the single. It's a good song, but I just think for the single, it just didn't have that thing that Love Bizarre had, which was that.
Oh, that groove. You can't.
Yeah. You can just lock right into that very erotic city. Just once you're in it, you can stay there forever.
Mm-hmm. Weird choice.
One thing I was going to say, sort of talking about like how I feel he was a real champion of women, and how the dynamic between him and his female proteges, even the ones that he had romantic relationships with, didn't seem icky or inappropriate or power imbalanced. Is, Sheila E., like I said, she music directed, many tributes to Prince, including the big Grammy one last year. Will always speak about him, will always be proud of her connection. Isn't, unlike someone like Vanity, trying to distance herself from the legacy of Prince. But I feel like, and with Vanity, it was a different story because it was kind of like she just wanted to disavow her whole past life, including, the Nicki 6 years and all that. But in general, it seems like the women who worked with Prince, even if the personal and the professional cross, it's like they have very fond memories of it. They're not, they're not trying
to definitely empowered them. You always put them in positions where they could sort of it wasn't just like, and here's the pretty girl. It was like,
right.
And here's this amazing artist, or you give them a platform. And then if you could, do what you're going to do with the platform, and you just.
I would argue Sheena Easton was more of a record company puppet before Prince.
Big time. He liberated that woman. He freed her.
I mean, you go from Morning Train 9 to 5 to Sugar Walls. I mean, it's a bit of a leap, but she did seem to be a little bit more in control. It could be all
big time.
It could be all for show, but at least it gave the appearance of her being more in control of her.
Because it was such a dramatic, but it was also so good. I mean, Sugar Walls, I still play that 12-inch.
It was Sandy at the end of Grease again,
Oh my God, yes. Well, that's become kind of a trope in pop that, I'm thinking of more modern versions of it, like Christina and Dirty, Christina Aguilera and Dirty with 2 R's is definitely one, or even like Janet Jackson when she, did Control, or more when she got sexy, of this idea of I used to be this young puppet and now I'm a sexy woman. And yes, I remember that when Sheena Easton first came out, my first memory of her was Morning Train. It was very regressive and housewifey, I stay at home and wait for my husband to come home and
big time
bring home the bacon. And a modern girl was sort of like, she wants to be a modern girl, but not really. She'd actually rather be a stay at home, housewife or whatever. And then Sugar Walls came out, and it was definitely like, okay, I've arrived, or fuck all that, pardon my French, F all that. I'm a new woman. Did Prince have any hand in Strut, or was Sugar Walls their first collaboration?
Sugar Walls was the only thing that he's really, I believe that's the only thing he's really credited for, because he didn't get any kind of credit for The Lover and Me or for Strut. But I kind of suspect they were getting demos for that record and soliciting songwriters, and that song came in, and they're like, do we want to do this? If we're going to do this, the rest of the album kind of has to match it.
Right. We're going to need to.
It informed that whole album, but that album was a smash for her.
I mean, what a turnaround that she had songs like Morning Train, where she was kind of like America's sweetheart, or I guess Scotland's sweetheart. But then, from what I recall, Sugar Walls, even though the video itself was just a performance-based video, there were outlets that didn't want to play it. And actually, it was in the MRC's Filthy 15.
Super controversial when it came out. I remember very well. People were very scandalized by that track.
So the Filthy 15 was when the MRC were like, these are the most offensive songs in pop right now for various, I believe, either Roddick City or Darling Nikki might have been on that.
It was Darling Nikki was the big, that was like the flashpoint song.
Now, Lyndsey, after your story about Pretty Miss, I have to ask, did you know what Sugar Walls was about?
That one I did. I did. Maybe because maybe because of the fact that the Filthy 15 thing brought it to my attention. Why is this? Why would the PMRC be upset about sugar? Are they diabetics? Like, do they prefer us to use, stevia? Like, why? What is wrong with Sugar Walls? Candy's nice. And then it's like, oh, okay, that's it. All right.
That PMRC list was the most useful thing for a teenager in the 80s.
I'm like, cool. I'm going to check out all of these songs.
I need all these records. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, there's actual statistics to show that when they started putting like the warning labels on things, that like it just did a favor to anyone who had that. And it definitely, it was a favor to Sheena if she was trying to reinvent herself and leave her old squeaky clean, sandy image behind by aligning herself with Prince and coming out with this, total 180 of a song. It definitely worked. And then I remember when she was in the You Got the Look video, I was like, this chick's badass.
So cool. And just like you said, suddenly her hair kind of had this little
She was Prince-ized. She was Minneapolised.
She totally had been Minneapolised.
I feel like, how like every 80s teen rom-com had a scene where like a nerdy girl goes to the mall with someone cooler, and then like there's a vignette where they just like dress her up in cool stuff and kind of turn her into like a punk rocker or a valley girl, whatever, and like makes her over. I feel like I hope somewhere in the vault, maybe Morris Day had his beta cam video for this, where he like took the people that, where he took Sheila E. or he took Sheena Easton or whoever.
Dressing her and fixing her hair.
It's like, here, do this. Put on this jacket. Put on these pants. Put on this brocade suit with the ruffled shirt.
I imagine it happened in Paisley Park, and there was like a bunch of closets and rooms.
Big time.
Oh my God.
You had to go through the gauntlet, just like by the time you come out, you're just like the frilly shirt.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
let's talk a little bit about someone who definitely rocked that look very well, and that's Wendy and Lisa from the Revolution.
The legends.
Wendy
where
Melvoin.
Where it all began. Where Prince learned he could trust women and they could take over and get it done even better than he could. I'm going to go on the record. Prince has never had better editors than Wendy and Lisa. When he had those two checking him, he made his best music because they were the only ones that had the power to be like, and he would actually be like, you know what, you're right.
Oh, really?
Any guy or anything that he would just be like, whatever. Wendy and Lisa could be like, and he would actually listen. And that's what I missed when they broke apart. I missed that a lot.
I mean, the plot of Purple Rain is sort of art imitating life, and that the whole plot, from what I recall, is that the characters in the band played by Wendy and Lisa say, hey, we have this great song and we want to introduce it to the band, and the kid, Prince's character, is resistant to that. But at the end, when he's like, fine, let me listen to the tape, he's like, oh man.
Like, look at what happens when we actually work together.
When I listen to the women. Yeah. And then, he has the big, powerful moment at the end of the movie, the triumphant, triumph over adversity moment when he plays the song that the women in his band brought for him. So it was definitely some art imitating life. I did not realize until relatively recently. I did realize that Wendy was very young when she joined the band. She was only like 19. But from what I understand, her first public gigs with the Revolution were at First Avenue for the shows that were filmed for the movie Purple Rain.
Wow.
I think that's correct. Yeah.
I did interview them around the time that the Revolution reunited about a year after Prince had died and then started to tour. And from what she told me, her first public gig with the band took place at First Avenue, and 3 of the recorded performances of that night made it into the Purple Rain album, maybe not the film, but onto the album. So if that's a trial by fire right there, it's like you're 19, you're playing with Prince.
And that's how she got the gig, was just by being so good. Because, like Dez had left, he was out there looking for somebody, And, Prince's girlfriend, Suzanne, was like, well, my sister plays guitar. And she showed up and immediately locked in with the band. And Prince was like, oh, shit, we got a new guitar player. Like, it was immediate.
Wasn't Wendy going out with Lisa at the time? And Lisa was already in like the 1999 era of the band. So there was all that connection. And that was, obviously.
There's a lot of love connections going on in that band.
Who's with Lisa in the 1999 video? Is it Brenda?
I thought that was Jill Jones. Am I wrong?
Jill Jones, thank you.
Oh, okay.
Let's talk about Jill Jones for a second, because we're talking a lot about how like Apollonia got the short end of the stick and like didn't get all these songs that were earmarked for her.
Imitating life, like
Jill
her role in
Jones.
Purple Rain is her role in real life.
So she has basically a cameo as like a waitress or something in Purple Rain.
She's always a step behind. She's always just missing the boat.
So from what I understand of the Jill Jones and how she got a raw deal, and actually I interviewed Jason Faulkner about a year ago, and about his career, and I asked him all about the 3 o'clock stuff, and he had very nice things to say about Jill Jones. I guess she sort of was not coming on to him in a skeevy way, but when he was at a party at Paisley Park, he met her and she was clearly interested in him, and he was a little shy or intimidated because he's like, oh my God, you're Jill Jones and you're so awesome and you're so gorgeous. And he kind of like, instead of going for it, sort of like retreated, and he regretted that as well. He should. But she got a raw deal. So from what I understand, she was part of the Prince world, the Prince camp, since around like 1982. And, like I said, she was in that iconic scene in the 1999 video, playing the keyboard up close with Lisa. And she, the blonde, real, just an indelible image, looking like a star. And she apparently was supposed to have her own solo album on Paisley Park. And I don't think it came out until like 87. It was produced and written with Prince with David Z. But by the time it came out, I even though from the reviews I think were pretty good, it kind of just didn't get attention. It was
well after the fact, for sure.
It was too late. So like, have you heard that record? What are your thoughts on Jill Jones's talent? Because she's one of the proteges that, doesn't get top billing when we're, talking about all the people he worked with. And why didn't he give her the attention?
She's no Dale.
Well, at least I was aware that they had a collaboration. So yeah.
There's something sad about her story, because the album did come so far after the fact. When I think of Jill Jones, I always think of the scene at the end of Purple Rain. Because she's like, where she's just standing, remember in the alley after the big performance of Purple Rain, and he gets all emotional, and he runs outside and he runs off, and she like comes out to talk to him, and he just leaves her just standing there. And she's just like got tears in her eyes, just standing there like, why? Why do I keep chasing this man who doesn't care about me? I'll just never forget that scene in the movie and being like, because everybody's cheering and stuff, and I'm like, but the poor girl. Like, he just left the poor girl who cared about him the whole movie and just never gave her the time of day.
I think the fact that between the three of us, all we can remember are her scenes in Purple Rain and in the 1990s.
There it is.
Album, it kind of speaks to the whole thing.
I've read good reviews of it. I'm going to admit I have not sat with it, but I'm going to after this. Justice for Jill Jones, because I feel that she was kind of, do we think that Prince sort of had a short attention span? Because we're talking, we're talking about how he had these songs for Apollonia and then they weren't. We're talking about Dale Bozio and how like maybe she got kind of became an afterthought. Did he get like really excited about a project or a protege and then get excited about the next one? What happened? What's that process?
Scott mentioned Susanna Melvoin. We haven't mentioned the family.
The family.
Well, I'm about to, but since we're still in the Melvoin family, I did want to ask because, Scott, you were saying that when Prince let Wendy and Lisa go, those were his best collaborators, and he never had collaborators like that again. Like I said, I interviewed the whole Revolution when they reunited, and apparently Prince invited Wendy and Lisa to his house in LA, what he was renting at the time, for a meal of what she said was paper wrapped chicken, which she said that because it was like a meal and chicken, but it was wrapped in paper, like I guess it was takeout or something. And she said that if they might as well have like wrapped up the chicken in pink slips, because that was what it basically that he invited him over, and he basically said, I want to let you guys go. And they said they saw it coming. They could tell on the tour they were doing or whatever that it was. But the
last show on the Purple Rain tour in Japan, when he lost his mind and broke all his guitars at the end, and Wendy said she knew that night that they would never play again they would never play together again live after that.
But do you have any insight into why, if they were such great collaborators with whom he did, arguably his most iconic work, and they were a bit on the sign of the times as well, which is another landmark album of his, like, why would he sever that tie? It doesn't sound like they, it was a personal thing, like they weren't getting along or didn't like
that
each
weird,
other.
that perpetual evolution with Prince, I think was so frustrating for so many people. And I'm sure was extremely frustrating for Warner's, was he just always had to reinvent and do something, like Purple Rain was still in the top 10. He's like, here's my next record. Oh yeah, no singles for a month. Don't put my picture anywhere. It's just like, what are you doing? It's like it would feel like he's trying to commit career suicide, but he was trying so hard to evolve. And I think he just didn't see anything beyond that next thing,
So what you're saying, Scott, it was a revolution evolution.
There it is.
Well said.
Bye.
So let's talk about the other Melbourne, Susanna Melbourne, who was, that band, The Family, she was involved with that, and they sort of came out of
big Prince relationship. Susanna and Prince.
They were engaged.
Yeah.
There's a weird dynamic there because Susanna and Wendy are identical twins.
Identical.
Right?
Yeah.
And Wendy is gay, and she was in a long personal relationship with Lisa during that entire time, and they're still friends and collaborators to this day. But like, there's a weird, very interesting dynamic there. So he's in love with Susanna and writing songs with her. I'm wearing my Starfish and Coffee shirt today. That was co-written by Susanna.
Classic.
But he's in love with Susanna and collaborating with her. But he's also very closely collaborating with a muse who is a platonic muse of his, who is gay and who looks exactly like a sister.
It's amazing.
Like, there's layers to that I don't know how to unwrap.
Serious layers.
That's a mini series.
That's like you're making love to yourself, making love to you. Like, it's just insane. It's just like in a parallel universe, I'm a gay woman, and that's why it's amazing.
And the poor person, I think, who got screwed the most out of the family experience is poor St. Paul.
Come on, St. Paul.
Who's St. Paul? I don't know who St. Paul is. Who is St. Paul?
He was the guy in the
cute blonde one. Yeah, the cute one.
In Screams of Passion, and he was very, very talented and very much on the rise, and kind of got pulled into this orbit, and then just ejected when Prince saw a squirrel or something run across.
There it is.
So. It's kind of a sad story because this album is, I don't know if you guys have heard the Family record. It's really,
I love the Family record. It's fantastic.
There's a reason why songs that were just afterthoughts on this record, Nothing Compares to You, the original version.
Thank you.
Lived on because it was really good.
Such a great record.
Again, I really think it's that short Prince attention span.
And it's a weird thing about Minneapolis in the 80s, because obviously Prince is like megastar, blows up, takes over the world, the Minneapolis sound. So if you're an artist in Minneapolis at that time, it was probably a blessing and a curse. Because you're like, hey, we're an opportunity. I'm the lead singer of the Family. And then it's like, like you said, Prince saw a squirrel, so the Family's no more. So now what do I do? And it's like the few artists that were able to take that moment and then to just keep it going. Because, often that Prince connection was literally all you had outside of Minneapolis.
Yeah, and if
you got kind of weird time,
and if you got kind of blacklisted or basically if you were on the outs with him, because going back to Morris Day and the Time, this is touched about in his book About Time. His relationship with Prince, they were, their friendship went back to Flight Time into childhood, but it was a fraught relationship, and there were definitely times when they were on the outs and estranged, and he definitely could be vindictive. And when we talk about why wasn't Morris Day bigger, why didn't he go on to do this or that, there was a little bit of that involved, where like if he was on the outs with Prince, who was the king of Minneapolis, all those opportunities would be taken away as well. But, not all proteges are created equal, both in talent or in terms of their opportunities or in terms of their success. Some of them did get screwed over, as we've mentioned. Since we're talking about the sort of era in which Sign of the Times happened, in which Sheena Easton came in, what are our thoughts on Cat Glover?
Well, we would like her to rap.
She did on her Catwoman EP, which is not... She did rap on her Catwoman EP, which bizarrely had, from what I know, no connection to Bat Dance at all. Catwoman and Bat Dance not connected.
Stop opportunity there.
So people who don't know who Cat Glover was, she's a great dancer. Okay, she's a great dancer, maybe one of the best dancers or the best dancer to ever dance with Prince. And she choreographed a bunch of his videos, and she was in his concert film for Sign of the Times. She was on that tour, and she was another person who was supposed to have an album on Paisley Park. The project was canceled. She eventually released the Catwoman EP, which to my knowledge, Prince didn't have any work on, and it doesn't sound like he did. Yikes. It's like, I just watched that video today to brush up, and I'm like, all right, Cat, you tried. It was not good.
She's on Alphabet Street. She's all over Alphabet Street.
Was she?
The cover art of the single.
But have you heard?
Cat, but we want you to rap, and that's her rapping in the extended version of Alphabet Street.
She raps on her Catwoman song, and the results are not great.
It's great on Alphabet Street. Do it like a dude.
Is that an example of where she needed Prince to like bring out her best then? Like,
just like Carmen Electra needed Prince.
I was just going to say, I file Prince. Cat Glover goes right next to Carmen Electra.
Can we talk about Carmen Electra? We're cheating a little bit because that's not 80s. It was 93, but whatever. Close enough. I don't feel like we can do a thing about Prince proteges without talking about Carmen Electra.
Just at least mention the fact that those two, like, he put her on. He put her on.
How did that come about? Because I actually quite vividly remember this, and I'm sure you guys too. In 93, MTV started to show these commercials that were like, I'm paraphrasing them, but we're basically like, something huge is coming. Get ready for Carmen Electra, which is, a name that stands out. Sounds like a pop star, rock star name. Like, this is going to be big. And they might have actually teased but it was kind of like, who is this? Who is Carmen? It was like this real marketing blitz.
Carmen Electra?
Mm-hmm.
He named her. And
did he?
Yeah, and I think we all know how it came about.
Yeah,
he saw a picture of her and said,
was she a model before, an actress before?
I'm sure she was a multi-hyphenate, Lyndsey.
Yeah.
She still is. She's a lifestyle guru. But that record wasn't. That record is one, unlike the Catwoman EP by Cat, that she was involved with, but it was not his best work.
No.
You have nothing more to say.
When you get to a point where you can produce anybody and have a hit, and it just keeps happening no matter what you do, the law of diminishing returns starts to kick in because you're just like, I can do anything. I'm Prince.
Yeah.
Pharrell went through it. I can produce anything. I can do country. I can do anything. And you start to delve into these areas that maybe you're not so strong at. And then you're like, hey, wait, what just happened? It's like, that's not what you do, man. Like, you don't do Carmen Electra dance pop. That's just not your strong suit.
I will say, though, that unlike, we've talked about some people who had a collaboration with Prince and it was not commercially or perhaps artistically successful, and then we never heard from them again. Carmen Electra, to her credit, she went on to have I think a lot of people
She took that platform and picked it up and ran with it. She was just like, everybody's looking at me now? Watch this.
I don't think a lot of people
never stopped watching.
I bet there's a lot of people who kind of forget that she even made a record.
No idea.
With it.
Yeah.
And maybe she'd prefer it that way. Perhaps that's for the best. Someone that I think, since we're talking about actresses that made records with Prince, and that also, since we're talking about women who made records with Prince that did not come out, apparently Kim Basinger made a record.
Oh, yeah.
In the 80s, around the time of Bat Dance and the Batman soundtrack. It was called A Hollywood Affair. It never came out, but you can hear all of it on YouTube and other parts of the dark web. I do believe that the 12-inch of Scandalous that she was on, it was called Scandalous Sex Suite. I do believe that was commercially released.
Yes.
But the urban legend was that sounds of them getting it on in the studio made it onto that track, that the moans, I Feel Love moans were not acted. She is an Oscar winner, so maybe they were acted. They were convincing, though.
There you go.
She technically is on a top 40 hit thanks to Prince.
Yeah.
Because Scandalous from the Batman soundtrack did scrape the lower reaches.
Scrape the lower reaches is a good way of putting it. But have you guys heard the bootleg, the unreleased but available on the web? Thank you, Google. Have you heard Hollywood Affair by Kim Basinger?
No, but I'm typing as we speak.
I was going to say, it's going to be the first thing I do, and I'm done here.
It's not a disaster. It's not horrible. It's very generic. You know what it is? It's like generic. It's that he was doing that New Jack Swing thing for a while.
Yeah.
There's a lot of sex noises on it. There's a lot of stuff that sort of sounds kind of like the rap in Madonna's Vogue or Justify My Love, like sexy, not rap, but like spoken, sexy talk. It's not bad, but it's super generic. Yeah, it's like that. It's super generic. She's not a terrible singer. You know, I will say there's definitely actors and actresses who have made no pun intended, vanity projects, recordings that were worse, that were more poorly sung. But do any of you have any intel about how this record got made but didn't come out?
I just heard it was an extension of their relationship.
Well, yeah, but like why it didn't come out? Do you have any intel? I'm wondering if like
when they broke up, they broke up.
And she never pursued music again, like on her own. It was kind of like just a product of their relationship. Yeah, that's a power.
Nothing was going to, when they were done, it was so done that there was nothing was going to come of that like that. You know,
she has a bit of a record of that with people.
A bit.
I feel like.
And so does he. So they're kind of the perfect combination.
Yeah. I'm sure. I think we all know how it came about. You know, they're making the Batman movie, and he kind of sees
Nikki Bale.
Yeah, there it is.
And you have a Susanna Hoffs situation on your hands, and it goes further than the Susanna Hoffs situation.
I mean, it was a full album, but it never came out. I'm just wondering if any of you know if, like, not just because they broke up, but if, like, someone was like, "This won't be a good for your career. This isn't a good record. Yeah. This is going to be like a Russell Crowe, dog star Keanu Reeves situation where people are going to like make fun of you and say this is bad." It's not terrible.
That would be a great question for her. I would love to hear her perspective on that because that's a really, really interesting question.
I have no inside knowledge of this, but keep in mind, this is the same period where the Black Album was supposed to come out.
Exactly. Prince was all over the place.
He was finding religion and things changing. Glyphs were being used instead of full names. Warner Brothers was verboten. So
a lot of crazy shit was going on.
A lot of swirling stuff happening around this time. So I would not be surprised if this was a victim to that.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, I could see that. Well, before we wrap up, you know, we started by talking about the real obvious ones, the real success stories, and then we sort of got into the unsung ones, or in some cases, the unreleased ones. Are there any other ones we want to do? I was doing, you know, we want to mention, like, I only very recently found out about Maserati, the band Maserati. And Maserati had some people, I believe Brown Mark from the Revolution was in it, and it was very Princey. But
super Princey.
I mean, like, kind of like B-level Princey, like kind of like too Princey. Like there was nothing original about how they looked or sounded. But I did find out, this is how I found out about them, is this year marks the anniversary, a very important anniversary, when Opposites Attract by Paula Abdul won the Grammy for Best Short Form Video at the 1991 Grammy Awards. Very well deserved. And I found out that Marvin Gunn from Maserati was the voice of MC Scat Cat, or one of the voices.
Very cool.
The singing voice, not the rapping voice, but the singing voice.
Poor guy.
He had brushes with pop culture, but he never got the glory.
Hopefully those royalties bought him a house. I think there are two people that we haven't talked about that had success away from Prince. You could still call them proteges because he gave them their start. Andre Simone, who had a decent solo career and became a big producer for Adam Ant and people like that.
Andre Simone's early solo albums are outstanding. Living in the New Wave is fantastic.
Jody Watley, I mean, he had huge mega platinum success doing her stuff. And Jesse Johnson, who is on our favorite soundtrack of all time, Pretty in Pink, with Get to Know Ya.
And Jesse Johnson was 2015. D'Angelo does a one-off concert up at the House of Blues on Sunset, hits the stage, starts playing. He's like, "Oh yeah, by the way, my new guitar player, Jesse Johnson." Wow. And Jesse Johnson's been playing guitar for D'Angelo for almost 10 years now. Because D'Angelo's that deep into the Prince stuff.
And
that makes sense.
Forever immortalized on a Time single, Jesse, now Jerome.
There you go.
And we must mention Ingrid Chavez.
Oh my God.
We're getting a little bit into 90s here, but I don't mind blurring into the early 90s. I just had to
say her name, Ingrid Chavez, because I'm on a whole Japan David Sylvian thing today.
Yes.
I watched the whole Gentleman Takes Polaroids thing, whatever. But just shout out Ingrid Chavez. You're a real one.
And it kind of brings it back when I was talking about how the Kim Basinger record had some sort of Justify My Love vibes. You know, obviously she co-wrote Justify My Love. There was a lawsuit about that, but she did. But yes, that was one. And if we're sort of skirting into the early 90s, which I think is fine because we talked about, you know, Ingrid and we talked about Carmen. Do we consider Tevin Campbell a protege?
Absolutely.
With Round and Round from Graffiti.
Yeah,
I mean,
dude,
Graffiti
Tevin
Bridge
Campbell was a protege from jump. Even before he got signed, people knew that Tevin Campbell was going to be something.
But he was around before.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, he wasn't really Prince's guy. I mean,
Prince didn't discover him, but he was already, like, everybody kind of discovered Tevin Campbell.
Well,
he was
Tevin under the Sheena Easton category.
Yeah.
Okay, adjacent.
Yeah.
We'll put him in the
people who were changed by Prince.
Yeah, I think people were kind of surprised
all?
that Prince was so into Tevin Campbell. I think people were shocked by that
because
he was such a traditional, you know, like clean cut kid. You know?
Found religion. Here's your clean cut kid.
And from my memory, you know, Graffiti Bridge was not a looked back on as a particularly successful movie project for Prince. I mean, but that was sort of one of the redemptive things of it, is that Round and Round from the soundtrack was such a hit.
Right.
Well, as we wrap up, you know, sort of taking it back to the album I mentioned, the compilation originals, where we get to hear Prince do the demos of a lot of the songs that were made famous by people he worked with, his collaborators and proteges and mentees. You know, we've talked about a wide swath of people here. Some of them are women, some of them are men, some of them are gay, some of them are straight. We have Tevin Campbell, who was a kid. We have Andrew Simone. We have Morris Day. We have Sheila E. We have actresses. What is the through line? Like when we're looking at like the people he chose to work with and the music he chose to give people, whether it was Susanna Hoffs or it was Jill Jones or it was Dale Bozio, like, do we see a connection between the type of people he wanted to have in his orbit?
Oh, I think we do.
Well, no, some of them were not hot chicks.
They're mostly beautiful. If it wasn't about, there was definitely a vibe though. There was a vibe thing. I think that was really important to Prince.
For the most part.
Yeah,
not always.
Kind of like you were saying, you know, like if you're not going to be willing to get up and dance, you know what I'm saying? I think Prince was constantly looking for people that were willing to dance with him. You know, were willing to just like go along with it. You know, they had that vibe, and that vibe might have lasted for a long time or a short time, but while it was happening, I feel like it was genuine. And
the one thing I'll ask about that is when it comes to the fact that, yes, the majority of his famous collaborators were women, where the personal and the professional crossed over, sometimes with great results, sometimes not. But do you think that for him, talent was an aphrodisiac? Like when he saw the prowess of drumming and musicianship that Sheila E had, or the pipes that
I would think so.
Sheena Easton
I would think
had.
So. Even in a weird way with someone like Wendy, even though he knew that it was not happening and he was with his sister. I think that definitely was something that, you know, got the neurons firing for sure, was seeing like, wow, you're beautiful and I want you, and wow, you can really play, you know?
You can really play. And that brings it back to what I was saying, where I feel like there was a baseline level of respect, even if the lines got blurred sometimes. And so I want to. So he brought us a lot of great music on his own, and then it was a gift that kept on giving with him, you know, spawning all these other great singles and all these great hits and these great careers. I'm going to take off because I need to listen to the Kim Basinger record
and
Dale's record. I don't know if that exists on the dark web, but I'm going to look for it.
It's streaming, and you got to see the video for Simon. You'll love it.
Oh my. Oh my stars. Life, in the words of Dale Bozio herself, life is so strange.
Oh yeah.
So strange.
So this has been a strange and wonderful conversation. Thank you so much, Scott, for joining us again and bringing your expertise.
Thank you for having me. You guys are reminding me of all these wonderful memories. My first two Prince shows were in 1983 in the early part of the year. December 1983, I saw Des Dickerson and the Modernaires at St. Andrews Hall, and it was fantastic. I just wanted to say that.
All right. Well, I can't top that. So we're just going to sign off. Thank you again, Scott. I am Lyndsey Parker. I've been joined today by Scott Sterling and John Hughes. We want to thank you for listening. Remember to give us a rate and review on your favorite podcast platform, and we will catch you next time.
This was Totally 80s, the podcast dedicated to the music of the greatest decade ever. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Totally 80s. And please leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Until our next episode, catch you on the flip side.